James Bidgood, federal member for Dawson. The most intriguing part of the campaign, I'd like to know the decision for this, was when Barack Obama went to Europe to campaign as a candidate, and 100,000 people turned out in Germany to see him. What was the main catalyst for that decision? Because I've never seen an opponent do that before, and it was outstanding.
Yeah, well, I think one reason he actually was traveling overseas was to beef up his foreign credentials. That was probably his biggest weakness, lack of experience. He was my age, 48. In fact, I'm older than Barack Obama. His birthday is in August and mine's in May. We were both born in 1961, so I'm 3 months older than the President of the United States. Sometimes it makes me wonder, what have I done with my life? So he was young and inexperienced, and he was taking a lot of hits on his inability to sort of manage foreign crises, which, we created a lot of them in the last 8 years, right? And so he was traveling overseas, and I think the campaign decided to show their force in Europe and try to show how different an Obama presidency would be in terms of world opinion about the U.S. He got a lot of criticism for that. The right wing was wondering why he was campaigning in Europe when his voters are here in the U.S. But I actually think it was for undecided voters who had on their minds this issue of inexperience. I think what they saw is the opportunity for us to restore our relationships with our allies around the world, and so that was a plus. So I think that was the main reason for doing that. And I think I will say that I think his major accomplishment in this first half a year of being in office is restoring restoring the relationships with the people around the world, and diffusing some of the anger and resentment that is out there in the U.S., which I think makes us safer as a country, by the way, too. Yeah.
Hi, Glenn Frost. Could you tell us a bit about how much time and money you had to spend on the technology platforms, and whether or not you worked with external IT companies or individuals, and the pros and cons of those?
Yeah, and I have to say that I was not part of the national campaign in the early setup, but the national campaign did bring in several major consultants, including Blue State Digital. I believe the head of Blue State Digital was in Australia recently talking about what they did. And so there was very smart people behind the technology, folks from Silicon Valley, people who had started some other social networking sites. So again, this campaign that in the early stages didn't have all the money it needed to run the race was still very fledgling. In fact, it was a long shot campaign in the early stages. People were thinking, yeah, he's an interesting guy, but boy, he has a lot on the negative side in terms of strength of candidacy. People thought he was a long shot against Hillary Clinton, yet they went all out and invested seriously in that technology. But it was a work in progress, ongoing. Every state had an IT director and several deputies who were doing a lot of code writing and internal work on the website and on the data to manage it in an ongoing way. We also had a new media director, someone whose job it was every day to wake up and figure out how to creatively use the tools of the website and the internet to engage with our supporters and keep people coming back to the campaign, and to expand our reach, add people. And so it took good technology and then investing in staff, people whose only job it is to focus on that. Oftentimes campaigns try to do it on the cheap, and the communications director is also the new media director, is also maybe the database person, and you can't do it at the scale and with the effectiveness that they did unless you actually devote the resources on the front end and then the staff resources in an ongoing way.
Hi, Mr. Blodgett. My name is Glenn. I'm a member of the LaRouche Youth Movement. There you go. My question, we've seen over the last few months, since Obama came in, that Obama's popularity rating has actually been falling because... Well,
yeah.
The reason, because when he came in, he continued the bailout policy of Bush. He also redeployed troops to Afghanistan, and now he's pushing... I just want to... Don't you think it's a problem when you sell a candidate in a bright, shiny package, but their policies don't back up their commitment?
Yeah. So, I didn't know you had LaRouches here in Australia, I guess. But they're everywhere. Well, here's the deal, and I have to tell you, I'm not a policy guy. I'm more a campaign person and an organizer. But I will say that for the most part, Barack Obama is doing exactly what he promised to do in his campaign. Take on health care reform, take on climate change after it had been sort of pushed to the side for years and years, and also refocus go back to Afghanistan, a place where we should have never left when we first went in to try to rid that country of terrorists. And so all those things are now taking place. It's what he promised to do when he was candidate. And so in the U.S. anyway, there really isn't controversy over those positions because it's what he said he was going to do.
Hi. Martin Salter, visiting Labour MP from Britain. Could I just ask, the numbers of people who voted for Barack Obama appeared to be substantially higher in core democratic areas.
Yeah.
And it appeared to me, although I've never seen the figures, that one of the great successes of the campaign in elections which are traditionally quite a low turnout, if you look in terms of the per head of population that voted, that Barack Obama's campaign motivated people, many, many thousands of people that hadn't voted before or were voting for the first time in a generation. I mean, was that a fact, and how did you achieve that remarkable achievement? If that was a fact?
It's a really good question because I focused, when I talked about the organizing, focused on the undecided voters, which I know is one of the things you have to do in elections down here. But since we don't have compulsory voting, the other big piece of campaigning is to try to convince people who are or should be your supporters to turn out to actually vote. And in the U.S., we haven't done very well on that. Less than half the population usually voting, the eligible population voting in elections. And I think the reason for that is oftentimes our candidates and the campaigns they run give people no reason to vote. And so if you are a candidate that doesn't ring true, it doesn't have that authenticity going for you, then people just won't vote. And for Democrats, it's a much bigger problem than for Republicans because the voting generally tracks income and education. And so the other side turnout is always higher. And so one way for progressive candidates to win is to inspire non-voters and new voters to actually vote. In fact, if you just do that, in some cases you can win elections. And it's amazing how many people don't figure that out or choose not to accept that as a strategic imperative. So yes, the other piece of the Obama campaign was intense work in base Democratic areas with voters who we thought, if we could connect with them and make the case, would vote for Barack Obama. That included students, that included minorities, that included low-income communities, and the evidence is right in front of us. People turned out in numbers we haven't seen in 4 or 5 decades in the U.S. The hope now is that we can keep those people involved. The young people that came in, I'm quite confident that many of them will stay involved. But for other marginal voters, again, it's going to depend on the candidates we put forward in the future and the campaigns they run. So thank you for asking that question because in the U.S., it's huge. It's a huge key to progressive power. And we just don't get it right over and over and over again.